Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector. Took a quick break from work just to kind of share some thoughts because I recently watched a video that RGT85 just put out about an hour or so ago, talking about the impact that resellers are having on retro game collecting. And as he was talking about that, I was looking at a comment that I had gotten on one of my videos where one of the commenters had mentioned that Limited Run is going to be re-releasing Rocket Knight Adventures, but I think they're going to be doing it as one of those like compilation type games where they put Rocket Knight, Sparkster, the one that released on the Super Nintendo rather. I think it's Super Sparkster on the Nintendo and then Sparkster on the Genesis. So there were 3 installments of the Rocket Knight adventure games, and I think all of those are going to be on one Switch cart that's going to be coming out by Limited Run. So I'm really excited about that because I'm a big fan of Rocket Knight Adventures. But once they mentioned that, it had me thinking, do remakes, when games are remade, do they help the value of the originals or do they hurt the value of the originals? And that's something that I've, kind of been looking at, because a lot of times when these games are remade, they bring awareness to a whole new generation of game players who either may not have even known that the original game was out or released back in the day, or maybe they just never had a chance to play it. So I think remakes are great because they expose a whole new community to older games. And I have 2 examples here, right? So you've got Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist. I do have the complete in-box version on the Sega Genesis, but thankfully, Konami released Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection, which is going to allow me to play a whole host of Ninja Turtles games, including Hyperstone Heist, all on one disc. And this is a game that you could get for about $20. Now, if I were to try to go and get Hyperstone Heist complete in box on the Sega Genesis, that's going to be roughly around $200. Similarly here, you've got the Castlevania collection, which gives you a bulk of the Castlevania games, including Castlevania, Simon's Quest. You got Castlevania 4, which is what I've got here. So Super Castlevania 4 is also here on this disc as well. My copy is still sealed because I do have Castlevania 4, Super Castlevania 4. That was the main reason why I got this. I also have some of the other Castlevania games on other consoles. But when I look at it, Super Castlevania 4 is still at least, when you have it complete in box like this, it's still at least a $170 to $180 game. So, and I started thinking about this, and I think that when companies remake some of these games, I think it helps the gaming community because it allows for more access to some of these games that can just become very, very expensive. And, I think a lot of times, when we start thinking about video game accessibility or retro game accessibility, people start to think about some of the prices and how the prices have shot up. And when you start thinking about prices shooting up and you start asking the question, well, why? Why are prices so high? It seems like a lot of folks kind of point the finger at resellers. And these are basically people who go out, they find games at very low prices, and then they go ahead and resell them for profit. And as a business model, I'm not mad at that. If that's what you're doing to pay your bills, take care of your family, if you're a reseller, that's fine, do you. But my perspective on, the whole reselling thing, or even people who don't resell, but maybe they hit up yard sales all the time, or they're constantly out and about just trying to find games. You're going to pay for your games one way or another, right? So if you let's say you spent 20 hours a week game hunting only to find one video game that's worth $100, $120, you got to think about the time value, right? When you go on YouTube and you watch a video of someone who's posting, hey, look what I just scored. I just scored this game that's worth $300 and I got it for $20 or $30. What you're not seeing are the hours and hours and hours that person spent either on Facebook Marketplace, Mercari, eBay. They're not telling you how much gas they burnt driving around town, looking for the games. They're not telling you how much time they spent, which when you're younger, time is not as precious of a commodity until you start getting older. Because as you get older in life, you realize how limited your time is. You have more responsibilities. You have more people that you have to answer to. You have more things going on. So time isn't necessarily your best friend. When you're younger, you've got all, especially if you don't have any responsibilities, you have all the time in the world. So it doesn't really seem like it's costing you anything if you spend 20, 30, even 40 hours in a week game hunting, looking for games, so on and so forth. Because in your mind, you didn't have to spend any money, but you did have to spend the time. And so when I look at it, I feel like resellers, it's a break even for them because these games just aren't falling into their laps. Most resellers are spending a lot of time sourcing games. They're driving around, they're looking for stuff, and they're trying to find stuff. And I feel like the ones that we know about, the ones who are the most popular, the reason why they're so successful is because they've jumped in with both feet, and they've been they were very clear with themselves about what they're trying to get out of the, video game reselling market, and they kind of have a plan and they're sticking to it. Again, I don't have a problem with anyone reselling anything. Do you have to live your own life. But RGT85 is funny. He said, hey, I don't want to be a part of this community. I'm not a part of any community. I'm part of the Hulk Hogan community. And I thought that was really funny because, it's kind of true. Even with me, I am not a video game connoisseur. I'm not an expert in reselling. I don't have all the experience in the world, but all I know are my experiences. My experience is playing video games and buying video games and selling video games. And I think there's fun to be had in all of those activities. The joy of going out and hunting, not knowing what you're going to find, meeting people, hearing the stories from people who you're buying the games from, or even if you're just going into a store and discovering the store, looking at all the cool games, all the nostalgia. I think that's cool. And I think it's also cool to just sit at home on a rainy Saturday and bust out some of your old games and play those as well. But it just depends on you. And I think when people get too caught up and they take it too serious and, they heckle each other, and it just becomes weird when it's no longer about the games. If you don't like a reseller, or if you don't like someone who's reselling video games, don't engage with them. Don't watch their content. Don't, just stay away. That's what I do. If there's something happening in a particular area that I don't like, or if I'm just not a fan of something, I just don't engage with it. But I think it's so funny that when people dislike something or hate something, but they engage with it anyway. It's like that girl who acts like she doesn't like you, but then she's always bothering you all the time because deep down she really likes you. It's like, figure it out. You know what I mean? And I think that folks just take it too seriously. It's video games at the end of the day, right? And and like RGT85 said, there are people who have disposable income and can go out and buy retro games. There are those who cannot. I think you just need to know what's working for you, what's beneficial to you, and what's going to make you happy. Do what makes you happy. If buying retro games makes you happy, buy them. If buying remakes makes you happy, buy those. If you'd rather just go on YouTube and watch someone else play the game, do that. But I think the more people focus on what makes them happy and less on what's not making them happy, I think they'll just be overall more happy. And because, once we start, nitpicking things and, heckling people and, once the attacks start, the hobby just becomes really whack, because now it's not about the games at all. It's just about judging, one another. And that's not really what it's about. If you resell, whether you're a reseller, whether you're a completionist and you complete all your games, regardless of what you do what makes you happy. Focus on, yourself, and focus on those who are giving you things or exposing you to things that make you happy. Here on this channel, like I said, I started this channel off really just in search of nostalgia. And over the course of the years, have I built up a good retro gaming collection? Sure. Have I sold off some? Sure. Have I bought some back? Sure. But that's all a part of the hobby, right? I don't think it has to be all or nothing. I don't believe in gatekeeping, and I don't believe that there's one specific way to practice or get engage in retro gaming. There's no one specific way. You just got to do what works for you, and figure out what's going to make you happy. For me, I do enjoy the retro gaming aspect of it. I'm not going to deny the financial component of it and that there's value to these games. And, you know, while I have them, I'm going to play them. And if I get to a point where I'm ready to sell them, I will. And whether I make money on them or I lose money on them, you know, I'll be glad to have at least had the game in my collection, played it for a little bit, and then pass it on to someone else who maybe can enjoy it. Because when we all pass on, none of us are going to take any of this stuff with us anyway. So, you know, again, this is just my reaction and response to RGT85's, you know, post not too long ago. I know for me, this is a little bit of a ramble, but I just had these thoughts here on a quick lunch break, and I figured I'd share them with my community. Again, we don't just do retro games over here. If you've noticed, I've been kind of branching off into other things because there's more things that you can collect. There's not just video games. I mean, sneakers. I'm a huge fan of the sneaker game and the sneaker community. And believe it or not, most of the folks who follow my channel probably aren't into the sneaker community, but the same thing is happening in the sneaker community. You have people who feel like people who buy sneakers just to resell them are scum, that if you don't wear your sneakers, you're trash and you're not a real sneakerhead. It's just all this kind of weird gatekeeping and all these different collecting communities is just funny to me. Just do what makes you happy. Don't worry about the next person. If someone's doing something that you like and you appreciate and you want to kind of know more about it, follow them. If they're not, then unfollow them and don't subscribe. Do you, folks, do you. Message of the day, do what makes you happy. And that's all I got on this quick lunch break. Hope you guys are enjoying your Tuesday and staying warm out there because the snow is crazy. I am the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.